All right, let's dive right into this explainer because we have got to talk about a genuinely shocking, completely unprecedented event that just rocked the tech world. Picture this. On a random Friday night in June, the US government did something it has never done before to a frontier AI model. They didn't just slap the company with a fine. They didn't issue some stern warning. No. They literally reached in and turned the world's smartest AI model off.
I mean, really set the scene in your mind for a second. You've got millions of everyday users, massive global enterprises, top-tier security researchers, all happily interacting with Anthropic's highly anticipated flagship AI models. And then, poof, abruptly the connection is just severed. By midnight, the most capable artificial intelligence Anthropic had ever shipped went completely dark for every single customer on Earth. So what actually happens when the US government unplugs a system like that? Well, the answer pretty much redefines everything we thought we knew about the future of tech.
It was an absolute whiplash. We are talking about an incredibly brief 72-hour window where we went from a triumphant, massive product launch to a full-blown national security shutdown. It started on Tuesday, June 9th. Anthropic releases their Mythos-class models. This includes the public-facing Claude Fable 5 and the even beefier underlying Mythos 5. Fast forward just 3 days later to June 12th at exactly 5:21 p.m. Eastern Time, a directive from the Commerce Department drops. And by midnight, total blackout. Just 4 days. That is all it took for a highly publicized product launch to mutate into a very stark geopolitical incident.
Section 1. The Friday Off Switch, an unprecedented event.
Section 2. The Jailbreak dispute and exactly why it was banned. So the whole mechanism here actually started with a letter. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick sent a directive directly to Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei. This order abruptly slapped export controls on both Fable 5 and Mythos 5. But here's the absolute kicker. It barred access for any foreign national anywhere in the world. And yes, that even included foreign national employees working inside Anthropic's own offices. Because there was literally no clean way to technologically comply with a ban that granular on such incredibly short notice, Anthropic was forced to do the only thing they could. They had to pull the plug entirely. But you know, why?
Well, there is a fierce and totally unresolved debate over exactly why this kill switch was pulled. We're looking at two very distinct, very passionately argued sides here. On the one hand, you have intense government alarm over AI agents independently executing complex, multi-step cyberattacks, right? But on the other hand, you've got a staunch defense from the tech industry arguing that these security flaws are not at all unique to this specific model, and crucially, that hastily patching them actually ruins the model's utility for defensive cybersecurity research. Let's impartially break down both perspectives here, starting with the government's case.
Okay, so on the government side of the ledger, the alarm bells were ringing, and they were ringing loudly from very high up. First off, the UK AI Safety Institute reported that within just hours of getting access to the model, their team managed to build a jailbreak that pulled malicious answers out of it. And they soon extended that to complex, multi-step actions. Then, according to the Wall Street Journal, Amazon CEO Andy Jassy actually picked up the phone and personally warned Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent that Amazon's own researchers used Fable 5 to obtain information that could be used in cyberattacks. Add to that the heavy suspicions that a China-linked group had gotten their hands on the new model, which sparked immediate fears of reverse engineering. And to top it all off, David Sachs, the co-chair of the President's Science and Tech Advisory Council, stated that the White House had actually asked Anthropic to patch or pull Fable 5 the previous week, and Anthropic had declined.
But let's contrast that with the industry's stance, because the pushback was massive. More than 120 cybersecurity executives and engineers signed an open letter demanding the controls be lifted. Their main argument? These flaws simply aren't unique to Fable 5. Expert Katie Masuris, who was reportedly the only outside expert to actually read the triggering research paper, pointed out that the jailbreak basically involved feeding the model known vulnerabilities, asking it to fix the code, and then humans manually turning that output into exploits. Her conclusion is absolutely critical here. She argued you cannot meaningfully patch this behavior without completely crippling the model's usefulness for actual cyber defense. Anthropic, for their part, publicly called the entire sweeping order a misunderstanding, pointing out that the model had survived thousands of hours of red teaming without a universal jailbreak ever being found. And this perfectly highlights the industry's structural argument. Think about it. Anthropic's Fable 5 is just sitting there, completely offline. But right next door, OpenAI's GPT 5.5 is fully online. And crucially, the Chinese open-weight model Kimi 2.7, also online. Cybersecurity experts are arguing that these other frontier models can do totally comparable security work.
So shutting down just one US model doesn't actually remove the capability from the world at all. It just severely penalizes one specific American company.
Section 3. The Cloud Utility Myth and a Terrifying Precedent.
All right, so this brings us to the crucial record scratch moment of this whole ordeal. If we zoom out for a second, the biggest takeaway actually isn't the immediate cybersecurity threat at all. It is the frankly terrifying precedent this sets for global tech infrastructure. To really grasp why, we have to look at what export controls actually are. Historically, as the R Street Institute sharply points out, export controls were designed for physical goods. They rely on physical choke points. Think about things like microchips that you can actually stamp with a serial number, or rare earth minerals that customs agents can physically inspect at a shipping port.
But an AI model serving millions of people over an API, that has zero physical choke points. What the government applied here was not a traditional border control in any meaningful sense. It was an emergency off switch for global software. I mean, it was literally the US government reaching directly into a US company's own digital infrastructure and turning it off for the entire planet. That is a massive, massive paradigm shift.
You can't rely on something that could be switched off. That stark warning comes from Jim Reed, the global head of macro over at Deutsche Bank. Think about the hundreds of billions of dollars being poured into AI labs right now. The sky-high valuations of companies like Anthropic and OpenAI, both of which are reportedly gearing up for public listings, rest on one fundamental assumption: that their best models will be adopted as a dependable global utility. But if that utility can just vanish overnight with zero warning, that foundational assumption completely crumbles. Let's break down exactly how this new regulatory kill switch risk alters the whole business landscape. First off, it completely destroys that dependable utility assumption we were just talking about. If you are an enterprise CISO or a European minister, you just watched a frontier model go dark in real time. This is going to force buyers to hesitate heavily before signing deep, exclusive contracts with a single AI provider. Consequently, this puts a hard ceiling on the uncapped global revenue growth these tech companies want to project to their investors. Regulatory risk is no longer just some hypothetical bullet point buried on page 40 of a legal document. It is a proven, demonstrated event that can halt your business operations in 90 minutes flat.
Section 4. The Global AI Backfire and Accelerating Rivals.
Now, export controls are a real, powerful instrument of leverage. But as we all know, leverage always cuts both ways. The stated intent here was to deny powerful AI capabilities to adversaries, but the likely result? Accelerating the very alternatives the US cannot control. Martin Korzempa from the Peterson Institute makes a brilliant comparison here. He points back to when China choked off rare earth exports to gain trade leverage. And what happened? The rest of the world simply learned to build around them and started mining their own rare earths. When you wield an off switch, you essentially teach the world that they need to build systems you can't touch.
Because of this whole situation, we are going to see a very differently shaped adoption curve for AI moving forward. Look, enterprises aren't going to stop using AI, but they will absolutely refuse to single source a layer of their business they literally cannot live without. So, we'll see a massive increase in multi-model diversification. We're going to see a huge surge in the rise of open-weight and self-hosted deployments, where companies actually own the underlying technology themselves. Expect a massive boost to sovereign AI funding, especially in places like Europe, who are demanding the right to run intelligence they independently control. And finally, you can bet your bottom dollar that every single new enterprise AI contract will be heavily mandated with immediate XRAMs.
Which leaves us with a final, absolutely vital question to ask ourselves. The whole drones and dollars era of AI basically assumed this technology was just going to be a global utility that everyone could easily plug into. But this event proved it isn't. It's a strategic asset. Access to it is a geopolitical lever, and as we have clearly seen, levers get pulled. So, as you think about your own tech stacks and the future of enterprise software, ask yourself, why bet your roadmap on a closed model that can go dark in 90 minutes? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the infrastructure you rely on, and I'll catch you next time.